Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, wherever you may be in the world. This is By Hook or By Needles. My name is Sam, and today I'm going to start a series that was inspired, provoked, or whatever you would like to call it, by someone who emailed me. Now, to be clear, I'm not really sure whether it was someone having like a go at me because of my channel name, or whether it was someone genuinely asking me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now, the person who emailed me said, well, your name is By Hook or By Needles, but I'm seeing a lot of knitting tutorials, but like almost zero crochet tutorials. And I scratched my head and I thought about it and I thought, you know what, they are right. So I'm starting today a series of tutorials which will hopefully take crocheters from never having picked up, or people, not crocheters because they haven't even crocheted, people who have never picked up a hook right through to people who can, crochet from a pattern, crochet all the stitches and all the rest of it. So I'm not going to name the person who it is because I don't know whether they were genuine or not. Regardless, I thank them for the idea, and they are right. But before we get started, and like I say, this tutorial is going to go, or these tutorials are going to go very step by step, very repetitive, very slowly. They are going to be for the type of person who has never picked up a hook. Keep that in mind. So if you're someone who perhaps has picked up a hook in the past, you know how to hold your yarn and your hook and all the rest of it, and you know how to do chains and the basic stitches and all the rest of it, then just keep an eye on the lesson names. I'm actually going to call them lesson 1, 2, 3. This one's before we start. It's not actually a lesson because I'm not really teaching you anything. But hang on, just a moment, please. Sorry, it was, I could hear someone at my door and I'm thinking, I'm not expecting a delivery today. What could it be? What could it be? I was all excited. And then I realized it was my father just bringing my rubbish bins in. What an anticlimax it really was. Anyway, yeah, so, if the lessons are going really, look for a lesson that perhaps you're not so clear on. So just look for the lesson heading, and maybe, it might be how to treble crochet without the extended like gap and that sort of thing. Look for lessons that perhaps are more apt to you. But the beginning lessons are going to be, I hope, useful for people who have literally never picked up a hook. Having said that, let's pick up some hooks. Okay, this is basically what I'm going to say you need, but there are many cheaper sort of alternatives to having these things. There's obviously certain things you are definitely going to need, like a crochet hook, but you do not have to use an expensive crochet hook, nor do you have to use expensive yarn. Especially if you're starting off, you might decide in a few lessons, crochet just is not for me, and that's perfectly okay. Not everybody is going to enjoy every craft. So, acrylic yarn, nice and cheap, and this is not a cheap hook, but you want a cheap hook. Now you can get plastic hooks, you can get wood hooks, you can get metal hooks, steel hooks, really fancy hooks, and I will show you all of those. Or you can get like your resin hooks. You can get, this is a bamboo hook. You can get just plain wooden hooks, or whatever. I would recommend going to somewhere like I would say Joann's, but that's closing down over in the US. Go to somewhere, I think like Michael's, I think Walmart over there sells yarn and yarn tools. Go somewhere like that. You want to pick up cheap hook. You know, I mean, you don't want it to be, you know, a bad hook, and it's going to be hard for you to know what is a bad hook and what isn't until you actually compare it to a really good hook. And yeah, so just pick up a hook. Now, I'm going to teach all of these lessons in a 8-ply yarn. Now, an 8-ply yarn is what the Australians and the UK use, term they use, and the New Zealanders use for a DK yarn. DK yarn is initially what the Brits called an 8-ply. They still do, but the Brits tend to know that DK equals 8-ply, and in Australia we tend to know that DK equals 8-ply. In America, they call an 8-ply or a DK weight, which is this, they call that a 3-weight. Sometimes some of them might even call it a light 4-weight. Please don't confuse the term weight with ply. Totally different. This is an 8-ply. It is not an 8-weight. Now, generally speaking, I think in all cases, the lower the number, the thinner the yarn, the higher the number, when you're talking about plies and weights, the thicker the yarn. The same can be said for hooks. They get a little bit confusing, in my opinion. The UK, used to have a numbering system, but I think they've now changed to just metrics, the system, which gives you your size in metric. So this is a 4mm hook, and that means that the diameter, I can speak, I promise. Diameter of the hook is 4mm. Okay, in the US they use the alphabet, so this is a G. Now, the alphabet can get a bit confusing because I believe that they introduced the alphabet when there were only full sizes, so like 1mm, 2mm, 3mm, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. So they went A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I think they went like that, okay? But then when they started getting to 3.25mm or 3.5mm, they had to add letters, or they had to add numbers. But the numbers didn't correspond with the millimeters. I'm telling you all this not to confuse you, which I probably have already done. It's just to make you aware that you need to be very careful as to which yarn, which needle, or hook, which hook you pick up. So you're going to need a G or a 4mm for your 8-ply light 3 or DK yarn. So you need a hook and yarn. I'd pick up, if you can afford it, I'd pick up an aluminium metal hook. I'd pick up a wooden hook and a plastic hook. Now, I wouldn't pick up all the same size. Perhaps you could have a 4.5, because that will work with DK, a 4.5. And you could have 5. That will also work with your DK or your 8-ply yarn, no problem. So perhaps you could sort of go, wood one might be 4.5, and your plastic or your resin, you might go to 5. And the only reason I suggest that is because you're going to want different sizes to test and play with tension, in case your tension's too tight or too loose. You're also going to need it to check with materials. Like if you're using acrylic, but some of you might find it easier to work acrylic with plastic. Some might find it easier to work acrylic with wood, and some of you might find it easier to work acrylic with resin. This, by the way, is a 5mm. It's actually not a 4mm. I don't think I've got a 4mm plastic, so I just grabbed this one. And this, these two hooks are actually for a different type of crochet, which I will discuss at a much later date. Most crochet hooks are not this long. They will be about this long, to about here. Okay, to about that length, about the length of this one. This is a Clover Amour hook. It has a thumb rest and a rubbery, bit flexible at the end, grip, which are meant to be ergonomic for people. This one here I thought I'd show is one I got specially made. They are interchangeables, and they are it's a Tasmanian Huon pine, and I've also got a blackwood hook handle. This is supposed to be a 4, and then you'll notice it says E. Don't ask, I don't know why. The letters, actually that might be E or a number 4. That might be a number 4 as in a number 4 English. That's the point. That might be really old style. I'll have to check that one out. But I'll show you how you can check your sizes in a minute. But yeah, that's just a little special made one. I got a full set of these special made ones. Yeah, they were not cheap. The Amour full set was more expensive than the handmade special ones. But you only need one hook. If you want to go straight to something like a clover or a tulip or a, I'm trying to think of another high price hook, you can. It's entirely up to you. If your budget allows, then go for that. But I would stick with the cheaper versions of the cheaper hooks, a simple Bates or a simple Boyd. Just a moment. Sorry, my dad just popped in. Yeah, okay, so you probably, well, if you go to somewhere like Walmart or, you know, Kmart here, what's what we call our Walmart here is called Kmart, or to, what else we got? We've got Target, and we've got Big W and other places like that. We've got lots of little places that would sell a cheap acrylic yarn and cheap hooks. You can pick up a Boyd, which is a B-O-Y-D here, a Boyd hook, or Boy hook, a B-O-Y-E in the US. Also in the US they have a hook, and I said it before, I think I started to say it before the interruption. Susan Bates, that's the hook I'm thinking of. But they all have different types of heads as well. Now this one is an in-between. It's an in-between what they call an inline and a, what's the other one called? Oh dear, an inline and tapered. Now an inline hook, that is more, sorry, yeah, an inline hook is more like this one, where the neck does not narrow. Okay, this neck is not narrowing. It's not tapered. And often the indent for the yarn for the hook, the head is not terribly sort of deep. Okay, this would be also, well, this is more like a, this is a combination as well, because it's not tapered until the very head, until you get to the very, very head of the hook. And then it's tapered, and it's got quite a deep hook in it. And the clovers are sort of, they have a smaller hook area. And by hook area, I just mean this area here where the head sort of goes into the hook. But they are sort of tapered very, very slightly. But yeah, you can have some hooks that are completely straight and not tapered at all. And yeah, now I'll just show you this one last hook. This hook, these are probably the most expensive hooks you're going to be able to find online. But this is a Pearls hook. See, now this says G 4mm, but this one says E4, but I don't think the 4mm is for, I don't think the 4 is for 4mm, but there you go. But anyway, these are beautiful hooks. They are very smooth, but they have no thumb rest. This one's quite heavy, being a metal one, but there are loads of varieties of furls hooks. That might be something that if you really enjoy your crochet, you might want to step up to at some point. You know, you might want to ask for a crochet hook as a gift for birthday or Christmas, just to try one. Personally, I prefer a thumb hook, a thumb grip on my piece. I prefer stuff that isn't so smooth that my thumb slides along. So, you know, a wood one is good. There's no thumb indent on this, but because it's wooden, I'm not sliding as easily as I do with the furls or the resin. The resin's not too bad. That's a bit grippy too. So, they are types of hooks that you can come across. You're going to need one of them at least. I recommend, like I say, a 4 or 4mm or 4.5mm. That's going to be a size G in the US. In the UK, I'm pretty sure they got them at millimeters, so it will be 4mm because we will be using 4-ply yarn. Sorry, no, see, I did it wrong. Not 4-ply yarn. Goodness, 8-ply yarn, which is a light 3-weight and a DK. All right, so they're going to be your two essentials. You need a hook and you need some yarn to have some lessons. You're going to need a tool that cuts, so whether it be scissors or like these little nippers, entirely up to you. They do not have to be, you know, the small, expensive, flashy stalk-shaped scissors or anything like that. I mean, you can use, you know, any scissors you like, as long as they cut the yarn initially. You might find later that you prefer to have your own special set so that nobody steals it, and you hide it away, and you call them the best scissors, which kind of indicates that there's the worst scissors are hanging around somewhere. But anyway, so you're going to need something to cut your yarn with. You may need a stitch, not a stitch counter. These are row counters, okay? They're handy for when you're making, obviously, something where you need to keep a row count, just so that if you get down your work and come back, you know where you're at. But just as easily, good old pen and paper will do that. So you don't have to purchase a stitch count, a stitch or row counter. They do count stitches as well. They can be a stitch counter, but the stitch or row counter, you do not need to purchase one. You can do with paper and pen until, you know, you decide, oh, look, you know, I think a stitch marker might help me. You will need a paper and pen too with some of these lessons, simply because as I teach you how to crochet, I'm going to teach you how to read a crochet graph, which is not something I don't think I've seen tutorials for beginners or newbies, whatever you want to call yourself, teach crocheters. And the reason why I'm going to show you how to do that is because I think it's very, very important, because I think one day, eventually, most patterns will go to the graph format. And if you can't read a graph, which are very, very easy to do, but if you can't read a graph, you might get a little lost. Okay, what else do we need? A tape measure. I've actually got this one. It's got a little magnet on the top, which actually, so it sticks to my, you can't see, but it sticks to my trolleys that I have. I'll just show you my trolleys so you can see. Sticks to my trolleys. See, you can just see there. Sticks to that, so I always know where it is. And because it's metal, it does not stretch. It has meters and inches and millimeters and centimeters. I think it goes to 3 meters or 10 foot. So it's a nice long one, and it can lock and everything. So yeah, I use that for measuring my work length. I can't find my cloth one, but I use that if I'm measuring someone's body or, you know, circumference of their foot or something. I can't find it because I've got a feeling my son took it and it never came back. So I probably need to purchase one of them. Once again, see, I'm making do with a simple tape measure, which I probably can guarantee you that if you've got a handyman dad, he's got a few of these laying around. Pinch one of them. You can just as easily use a normal plastic clear ruler. I can't reach mine right now, but you could use just a normal plastic clear ruler. That's going to suffice just as well. Hang on, let me know I can't reach it. And I'm not going to move everything to try and get it. And, or, if you're going to, you know, if you haven't got any tape measures or rulers or anything at all, and you do want to go all out and you want to get a stitch marker and all the rest of it, and you've got the budget, and this cost me, I think, under $10 Australian. That's going to be about £5 for the UK and around $7 or $8 for the US. It's a Knit Pro gauge for knitting and crochet hooks. So what you're basically doing is you take your crochet hook. Your crochet hook, it says it's a size 4. So you go to the size 4 and you lay it in there. And as long as it does, the hook itself does not move side to side like within it, and I'll show you what I mean, it doesn't go side to side like that, you know you found the right section. Now, why are you measuring hooks, you might ask, when you've got the size on them? Because not all hooks are made perfectly. Some will say 4, but might better fit in a 4.5. Now that actually, you can hear it, it moves from side to side. So it's always a good idea, if you can afford one, and if you've got one, to get one of these measures. They also measure knitting needles. I don't have one handy, but you do the same. You just lay your knitting needle in, and it will tell you your knitting needle size. It also has a cutter for your yarn. So this one's really quite handy because it cuts your yarn, and it'll help with gauge. It's got a gauge swatch, and we'll talk about gauge swatches later. But basically, a gauge swatch is where you will knit or crochet a square of fabric, and you will look at it, and you will, you know, within the section here, you will count how many rows and how many stitches across, and you will know, you will compare that to what it tells you in the pattern to know whether or not you are going to, you're making the size or the item too big or too small or whatever. This really, a gauge, is only really, in my opinion, necessary for if you are making something wearable. And when I say wearable, I mean a hat, not a scarf, mittens or gloves maybe, not a blanket, not a shawl, a jumper you would need it for, a gauge, a cardigan, you know, a hoodie, anything like that, you're going to need, anything wearable, you're going to need a gauge for. But we will look at those, like I say, much longer down the track. Again, this is a not must not have. You don't have to have it, but it's nice to have because, like I say, it's got a yarn cutter as well, and you can check your hook sizes, especially if you have difficulty reading the letters or millimeters. And some might only come with a letter, and some might only come with a millimeter. And then, therefore, you're like, oh, well, what size? And the pattern might give the letter, and then you go, well, okay, what is that? So then you can measure and you can make sure that you've got the right size hook. So it's handy for that. Okay, what else do you need? Okay, I got this fancy smancy little container from Temu. Okay, and it just contains a variety of yarn needles, darning needles, whatever you want to call them. Some are, no, I don't think any of them are straight, are they? Yes, some are straight. Yeah, hang on, show you the straight ones. Oh dear, can't pick it up. There you go, some are straight, and then some have a hook on. And they're really handy for tapestry knitting, for cross-stitching, for sewing up amigurumis, but they are also very handy for just sewing up your knitting or sewing up your crochet. So, you know, I've got a selection of them just so that, you know, I lose a lot of needles. So, you know, I was always losing needles as a kid, and my dad was always going about the house saying, if I step on that lost needle, I'm going to kill you. So, once again, you don't need a little collection, or you don't need a special container for them. You just need one darning needle. If you've got a sewer in the house, they're going to have a darning needle. It's probably thick enough that they probably don't use, because if they're using it for sewing, they won't need the really thick ones. So, you've got that. Now, here I've got a little kit that I sort of put together for myself. And what it's got basically inside it is darning needles, stitch markers, which is another thing you might need. These are stitch rings. These are for knitting. These are sort of markers as well. The different types of markers for different types of projects. I've also got a safety pin. I've got my patterns. All my patterns are on my flash drive. I've got a yarn threader to help me thread. And what else have I got in there? And a straight darning needle, I think, as well. Okay, so, oh, that piece just came out. Now, I got this little thing when I, what did I purchase? Was it buttons? Or, might have been buttons, or, oh dear, is that not going to go in? Come on, don't be a pain. It comes with little dividers, so you can actually adjust the size. I'm trying to figure out which way it goes in. It goes in that way. Come on. But it doesn't want to go all the way down. Oh, yes, it does. Okay, so I usually have that with me because it's got all different types of stitch markers and my darning needle and that sort of thing. Now, there are other types of stitch markers. Now, these ones I use mainly because they're so fine. I use mainly for knitting because I want something that's really fine, but they can be used for crochet. Now, these little wooden ones I recently got, I actually even put knit 2 together on the back and SSK on the back, and that's just so I can put them where I'm supposed to do these things so I don't get lost. But that's just that's another thing. I've also got these very fancy stitch markers. You can get some really pretty fancy stitch markers. So this is sort of basically I've got a tension ring, which I don't necessarily recommend or use. And just some more and these are stitch rings. You can use rings for knitting but not crochet, because it'll the crochet, it will get locked away, and it will with the knitting if you don't do it right. So I got these also cute little stitch markers with numbers on them. That's so I can attach this to my project to let me know what size hook I've been using. In this case, that would be, you know, it could be a 4mm or it could be a number 4 hook. Okay, so that was handy too. All right, so yeah, you can make your, if you get buttons or beads or something, if you know someone who does a lot of bead work, you know, jewelry or whatever, they might have some of these little containers. They might be handy, but you will at some point need stitch markers. But again, the best sort, I think, for crochet are these ones, because they are lockable, and so they don't come off, and if you accidentally crochet them into your work, you can just unlock them and take them out without having to unravel your work. I think they're a pretty good size for your crochet, and yeah. So stitch markers are good to have, but you don't have to have that as a stitch marker. Here's another stitch marker. Just cut a piece of thread, put it on your finger. Oops, go through. Pull on it. I'm not doing this very successfully, sorry. And pulling it again. Tie it over again. There you go, a stitch marker. And that will also mark your space. And that's cost you nothing but a little bit of yarn. Alternatively, you can even have a longer piece of yarn, and you can have the, you know, you can hold, as you're knitting your rows, you knit your first row, it's in front, and you put it to the back, you crochet your second row, and then you put the yarn to the front, you crochet your third row, and you put it to the back, and in that way it marks every second row at the front, marks every second row at the back. You're able then to count your rows easier, so you know which row you're up to, which helps eliminate the use for this. Okay, I think that's, I mean, I'm going to say that's all you need as essentials. And even as I've explained, if you use the long thread as your as a counter, as well as a stitch marker, you can do away with this and this. If you use a good hook, buy a hook like a Susan Bates or a boy hook, or something like that, or a pony hook, or even the Walmart, I think, have their own brand, and so do Joann's have their own brand, I think, of a hook. And there's a very good brand of hooks called Dots hooks. They're pretty good. They're going to be very good, true to size, because they're, you know, they've all got a good name, so they've got a good reputation. They're not going to be varying from the size given on the hook. I'd be very surprised if they did. So that will do away with this, you know, except for the gauge. But you could use a ruler for your gauge. So you can do away with that. You don't need your hugely expensive hooks or your handmade special hooks. All you really need, like I say, is your hook. I prefer a handle because I knife hold, which I'll go into in the next video. You can also pencil hold. So pencil hold is you hold your hook like you would hold a pencil. Knife hold, you hold it as if you would hold a knife, or I was going to say a spoon, but I suppose a bit like a spoon, but mainly it's called knife hold and pencil hold. I will go into them at the beginning of the next video and show you how both are done. Yes, I actually learned how to pencil hold to show you, because I'm a knife holder from way back. And got to tell you, the pencil hold isn't too bad. Anyway, so really you can get away with just this sort of stuff. Something to cut your yarn, something to sew your ends in, something to measure with, and a hook. These are extras fancies that you could get if you just want to treat yourself. Maybe you've done a few lessons, or you think, you know what, I really want to be encouraged to do this, so I'm going to spend just a few pennies more and buy some stitch markers and whatnots just to make the travel, you know, I don't know, more enjoyable or whatever. But you know, not that it does. I mean, you know, believe me, a $35 hook does not necessarily make your experience more enjoyable. There's a lot of people who do not like the streamline pearls hooks. I wouldn't say I hate them. I wouldn't say I love them. I would say I can use them. I'd probably be better off with this with a pencil hold, to be honest, thinking about it. The only reason I dislike this is there's no thumb grip. But I put a bit of tape on it. Voila, thumb grip. But yeah, so yeah, you just, you know, these are what you're really your essentials. These are just like added essentials if you've got the budget for them. But you can get away with these and, you know, still enjoy your crocheting. I prattled and waffled on way longer than I probably should have, but I really wanted to get you to understand and recognize what you need as opposed to what you could need, and also how much of everything you're going to need and everything. I don't want you spending a fortune in case you do not like it. Like I say, these lessons are for people who have never picked up a hook. So they are going to be to the experienced crocheter and even the intermediate and beginner crocheter. A lot of these tutorials and lessons are going to feel really dumbed down. You're going to think I'm talking down to you because, you know, I'm really going to basics. And I'm not talking down to the new people who have never picked up a hook. I'm just really wanting to make it as easy to understand as possible. So if you've got a bit of experience, maybe skip the first few lessons until you see something come up that you're not so clear on or good with. And please, if you are brand new and never picked up a hook, do not be discouraged. I would encourage you to try at least 2, 3, maybe even 4 lessons before you decide this isn't for me. Because there's going to be a lot of slow working stuff initially, then it's going to pick up a little bit because I'm going to assume your skill level has picked up a little bit, which it will if you practice, and then it's going to be more enjoyable. So it's a bit like watching Game of Thrones, the first few episodes. You watch the first episode and you think, this is just totally stupid. I'm never watching this again. If you watch the first few, 2 or 3 or 4, you go, okay, I see why people like it. I hated it in the end, but we won't go there. But yeah, it's a bit like a, you know, one of those series that people say to you, you've got to watch the first few seasons, or you've got to watch the first few episodes. Sometimes it takes a while to get into it. Crochet can be a bit like that for some of us. I'm really going to go with it now, otherwise I'll still be here at an hour. Please take care. Come back. I'm going to do the next lesson tomorrow. But obviously, you know, you've got plenty of time to get your bits together, because the following lesson after that will probably be, you know, 5 days or whatever away. Take care. Goodbye. I will see you next time. Bye for now.